check. We're recording. Red button. Great. Hello. Welcome to My Compound Life. I'm going to take you on a journey. Essentially over to my gym. It's the Sunday morning. Let me pull my car out. It's a Sunday morning. In case this is, I don't think there will be any content that are time sensitive, but it's the 26th of October. Good to have you, good to see you. Let me make sure it's recording fine. Okay, that's fine. Close garage door. Okay, so Bitcoin is at 111,000. I think it's showing strength. It's slightly creeping up to 112,000. Seems momentum might also be coming back, so that's all positive, very positive for Bitcoin. I think there's still a lot of discussion whether have we topped at recent 126,000. That was about 2 weeks ago. I think the overall sentiment could be a yes. However, there are actually a lot of data to back that up, that the 4-year cycle for Bitcoin has actually extended, right? So it might or might not peak in Q4 this year. So Q4 is right now, and with a possible extension onto Q2 next year, right? So everyone are still hopeful. I think a lot of such analysts are using global M2 liquidity to determine this, and at the same time there's also the expectation that gold peaks followed by Bitcoin peaks, right? So and there are also a lot of positive catalysts, I think, coming. So obviously Trump is over in Malaysia. He's gonna have chat with President Xi, and hoping that all of this would be positive and eventually leading on to abolishing the China and US tariffs. And of course, towards end of year, so next week, this coming week actually will be very important, because we're gonna see whether Fed would announce a rate cut. Okay, so the purpose of today's video, right? Because obviously Bitcoin still has plenty of momentum. It's also to chat a little bit about if someone like myself or yourself is in your 40s, right? Is it too late to get into Bitcoin, right? So I'm purely just talking about Bitcoin on crypto, okay? So a little bit about myself. I've obviously gone through it, and I've made a lot of mistakes during my Bitcoin and crypto journey, and I just want to make sure that none of you are making that mistake, and that will also help you to save a lot of money when you're going through this journey, right? So I still truly believe that it's never too late for Bitcoin, right? Essentially is because the final Bitcoin will be minted in 100 plus years, I think 130 years, right? And there are only a finite amount of Bitcoin available, right? So in specific this asset class, there will essentially just be more and more people going to want to own this, right? But Bitcoin isn't like a Pokemon card, right? Or your Labubu dolls. And essentially it's a kind of like a new ways of storing your money or your value, right? And with the increasing of institutions adoption, right, this makes this asset highly attractive, right? So personally speaking, I would deem Bitcoin to be much more stable, to be much more valuable than gold, than many of your stocks and shares, right? But certainly, you know, there will be time when you kind of cross compare some of the asset. You know, Bitcoin might not outperform some of the up and coming rising companies, right, that are AI specific driven. But overall, I think Bitcoin would still gives us a very good compound annual growth rate, right? We call them CAGRs, right? So there are some estimation or projection in terms of how much Bitcoin can gives us compound annual growth rates, CAGR, for the coming years, right? Of course, it's not going to be exponential, like giving you, you know, thousands of percent each year, right? But on average, it would still gives you between 20 to 30%. So that's an estimation or projection coming from Strategy as well as ARK Invest, right? So it makes it a lot more attractive in comparison to, let's say you invest in ETF for S&P 500, right? Because ETF S&P 500 will essentially gives you about 10%. And 10%, you need approximately 10 years worth of your investment in order for you to double, right? And essentially, if you put in for Bitcoin, it would probably take 3 to 5 years, right? So if you're into this asset class, if you're even considering investing in this asset class, I think now is a good time to enter. Certainly you don't have to go all in. You know, in my other videos, I always talk about the importance of DCA as opposed to huge lump sum in, right? So DCA in, DCA slowly going in, it's very important. I've actually gotten some figure, right? So if assuming Bitcoin would outperform many of the other asset class or more of the stable asset class out there, like the ETF, right? If you are someone in your 40s, right, assuming you want to retire in sometime in your 60s, and especially in the UK, you know, we have government pension, we have government pension, we call them state pension, right? And certainly we also have private pension. I think that lady is gonna go out. Perfect, great. I've got a place to park. Oh, she wants to come out this way. Let me go. Great. Okay, so assuming, you know, you are someone earning you know, middle class income, right? So that's good. That's actually very good for you, right? With your state pension and your private pension, presumably by the time you retire, you're gonna end up having around 15 to 18K per annum, right? Ask yourself the question, would that be enough, right? Maybe for some it's actually enough, right? But for me, I would never ever say it's enough in terms when it comes to money, right? Let me just go back up a little bit. That Tesla next to me is it's parking so near. That's okay. It's a Tesla owner. It's fine. You know, I'm a Tesla owner too. But anyway, coming back to, are you content with the government pension as well as the private pension, right? Maybe yes, maybe no, but I want to give you another opportunity to top this up. And that will only cost you approximately, oh my God, that will only cost you approximately £200 extras, right, in buying Bitcoin, right? So what you can do, if you don't feel comfortable buying Bitcoin from an exchange, there are ETPs, ETNs, I spoke about them, that you can buy and to start to build up another leg for your pension, right? So I did some calculation. If assuming the bull case, if assuming the compound annual growth rate remains at approximately 30%, right, which is already outperforming any of the other ETF that you can think of, right? In a bull case, 30% annual return in the future, by the time you get to 60 or 65, right, that amount would come up to about 5.2 million, right? So that is essentially just putting in £200 a month. Essentially that would have a small knock on your lifestyle, right? No, I'm not going. Essentially, because you might be saving for your holidays or your dream home or whatever, right? But assuming in your 40s, right, you already have made purchase of your property, you're essentially just paying off your mortgage, and assuming you do have some disposable income, right, and setting aside £200, it's not going to have a drastic effect on your lifestyle, right? So in a bull case, you would probably end up with about 5.2 million, right? In a more realistic case, right, let's sandbag this and not to go too bullish. If the CAGR, right, over a period of time, it might drop, because any asset class from inception until much further along, the compound annual growth rate actually drops, right? So a 20% compound annual growth rate return which still gives you 1.1 million by the time you retire. So that's good, right? And if we want to get into a highly conservative estimation that says 15% compound annual growth rate, right? That would still gives you, by the time you get to 60, 65, that would still gives you £500,000. So bear that in mind. I think it's definitely worthwhile to consider. If you kind of stumble across my channel, right, don't immediately ignore this asset, Bitcoin asset, right? Give it a thought, compile a little bit more research. I think you won't regret. You won't regret this. Trust me. Okay, time to head to the gym. So I'll chat to you later. Bye.